It's funny how your whole world can shatter from a few lines of text. I still remember the moment, clear as day. I was halfway across the world, boots deep in desert sand, adrenaline humming in my ears from the mission we'd just completed. I hadn't slept in over 30 hours, but there I was, hunched inside a metal tent, staring at my screen while everyone else passed out cold. I opened my inbox and saw it a message from my wife. The subject line just said, "We need to talk." I clicked, heart pounding, and in the most casual, almost emotionless tone, she told me she was done. She'd left, packed her bags, moved out. Said she couldn't do this anymore. She even ended it with a smiley face, like she was breaking up with a guy she went on 2 dates with, not with her husband of 8 years. Not with the father of her unborn child, at least. That's what I thought back then. My name's Adam. I'm 33 years old, a U.S. Army logistics officer, and I've served for over a decade. And this is the story of how the woman I built my life with blindsided me in the worst way possible. But she didn't know one thing. I had prepared for this day years ago. And by the time she reached for my accounts, the house, and every asset I trusted her with, it was already gone. See, I wasn't always this calculated. In fact, I used to be a hopeless romantic. I met Sarah during my first deployment. She was a nurse at a base hospital in Germany. Funny, bright, full of life, the kind of woman who lights up a room when she walks in. We clicked immediately. I fell hard and fast. Maybe too fast. After a year, we got married in a small ceremony while I was on leave. She wore a simple white dress, barefoot on the beach. I still have the photos though, now they feel like someone else's memories. The early years were good. When I was home, we'd binge watch movies, fix up the old house we bought outside of Fort Hood, and talk about starting a family. When I was deployed, she sent long handwritten letters. I thought, this is the woman who's got my six. But slowly, things changed. The calls grew shorter. She stopped sending photos. When I came home for a month in 2022, she seemed distant, cold. She barely touched me, said she was just stressed. I ignored it. I chalked it up to the deployment stress affecting both of us. But deep down, a part of me knew something was wrong. I wasn't some fool. I've seen this story play out before, fellow soldiers getting divorce papers mid-tour, some even losing everything because their spouse drained their savings, sold their car, or worse, cheated and had a kid that wasn't theirs. So I made a plan. Quietly. Carefully. Not because I didn't love Sarah, but because I knew love doesn't protect you from betrayal. I opened separate savings accounts, transferred ownership of some assets to a family trust under my mother's name, and made sure my military benefits couldn't be accessed without my biometric authentication. It felt paranoid back then, like I was preparing for a storm that might never come, but I'm glad I did, because the storm came, and it came fast. After I read that email, I sat there for hours. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just stared. A couple of guys from my unit passed by, clapped me on the shoulder, asked if I was okay. I nodded. Yeah, man, all good. But inside, I was hollow. I had to finish out my deployment 3 more weeks in a combat zone while knowing the woman I loved had walked out. Worse, I had no idea where she went or if she was with someone else. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later. She tried to clean me out. 3 days after she sent that cold goodbye email, my phone buzzed again. It was a notification from my bank, or rather, what used to be our joint account. Someone had just attempted to withdraw over $18,000. Another alert followed. She tried to access the home equity line. Then another, she was calling the insurance company to change the beneficiary. All within the span of 2 hours. Sarah wasn't just leaving me, she was erasing me. I sat on my cot, heart pounding, but oddly calm. She didn't know I had already pulled the money out of that account months ago. She didn't know the house deed had been quietly placed into a revocable trust that required dual signatures, mine and my lawyer's. And she sure didn't know I had a military-grade cybersecurity alert system watching every transaction like a hawk. What she thought would be a clean sweep turned into a dead end. Every move she made bounced. Denied, rejected, and that was just the beginning. I didn't confront her right away. I waited, observed. My lawyer, a buddy from ROTC who now handled family law, started pulling records. We traced her new address through an online furniture order. Guess where she moved? Into an apartment downtown, paid for in cash. But not her cash, my cash. Or what she thought was mine. Turns out she tried to sell a classic motorcycle I owned, but the title was never transferred into her name. And the dealership flagged the VIN because I'd set a digital alert the moment anything under my name hit the resale market. She thought she was slick, but she didn't know who she married. Now let me pause and say something. I didn't enjoy this. I didn't set up protections because I was vindictive. I did it because I saw what happened to guys who gave everything, served their country, came home with nothing but PTSD and a foreclosure letter. I loved Sarah, but I loved my future more. And I wasn't about to let betrayal be the legacy of everything I'd built. What hit hardest wasn't the money. It was the realization that she had planned this. For months, she'd been slowly disconnecting from our life, found a new apartment, opened new credit cards, changed her social media handles. She even blocked some of my family members. The sweet girl I married on that German beach had become a stranger, one who smiled to my face while filing separation documents behind my back. And then I saw it. The real reason she left. One night, during a sandstorm lockdown on base, I was scrolling through a backup drive I'd synced from our old iPad, the one we used to share before deployments. I guess she never disconnected it. Because sitting in that folder were photos. Dozens. Her. Him. Some guy I'd never seen before shirtless. In my house. Wearing my robe. A man at least 10 years older than me. At first, I couldn't breathe. Then I zoomed in. I saw the date stamp. The first photo was taken 2 weeks before she sent the breakup email. That meant the day I kissed her goodbye, boarded the flight to Kuwait, and promised to come home safe. She already had someone else in my bed. But that wasn't all. Hidden in one of the screenshots was a calendar notification. Baby checkup 10 a.m. Thursday. My blood froze. She had told me we were trying. I thought the pregnancy tests a few months back were just us being hopeful, but she hadn't said a word about being pregnant. So I asked myself the question that haunted every second after, was it mine? I got my answer 2 weeks later. I returned stateside and went straight to a private investigator, discreet, professional, ex-military. We tracked her movements, cross-referenced her check-ins, and yes, even got a subpoena for the clinic records. She was indeed pregnant, but the estimated conception date didn't line up. Not unless I'd somehow fathered a child from 7,000 miles away. It hit me like a punch to the chest. She hadn't just betrayed me, she tried to replace me. But this isn't where I broke down. This is where I got smart. I called my lawyer. I pulled the trigger on a clause we discussed long ago, but never thought I'd use a marital protection clause tied to infidelity. Texas law isn't always kind to service members, but we had documentation, financial trails, and now medical proof. And the best part, I had never legally added her name to most of my core assets. Not the land I inherited, not the military retirement account, and certainly not the digital royalties from a tactical gear invention I licensed in 2021. She thought she was going to walk away with everything, but she didn't realize she walked into a trap she built for herself. By the time the court hearing came, I didn't show up with anger. I showed up with facts. And by the time the judge read the final ruling, Sarah stood in that courtroom not with a payout, not with a property settlement, but with a debt. One she owed me. The day the ruling was finalized, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't walk out of that courthouse with a smirk or a sense of revenge. What I felt was stillness. Like the moment right after a thunderstorm, when everything is wet and wrecked, but oddly quiet. I had spent nearly a decade building a life with someone I thought would be my forever. But in the end, I was just a chapter in her game plan. Still, the one thing she couldn't predict was that I would outmaneuver her without ever raising my voice. That I would walk out with everything she thought she'd taken, and most importantly, with my dignity intact. Sarah stood across from me that morning, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Her eyes flicked toward the court officer as the judge read the decision. She would receive no spousal support, no claim to property, no rights to my military benefits, and because of the fraudulent attempts she made to access my accounts while I was deployed, attempts well documented with IP logs and timestamps, she was ordered to pay restitution for legal costs. She thought this was her power play, but she played herself. I left the courtroom quietly, drove straight to my parents' house just outside Austin. My mom had made sweet tea. My dad grilled steaks. We sat in the backyard like nothing had happened. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Peace doesn't come from payback. It comes from preparation. From knowing who you are when everything else falls apart. Over the next few months, I rebuilt. I took a brief leave from the military to travel, something I hadn't done for myself in years. I spent time in Colorado, hiking and breathing in fresh air without needing to watch my six. I went to therapy not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I could have been so blind and how I could trust again. Slowly, the bitterness started to fade. The anger loosened its grip. Then one afternoon in late spring, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter from Sarah. It was handwritten, no return address, just her slanted handwriting on a white envelope. Inside were 3 short pages. No apologies, no explanations, just confusion. She said things like, "I don't know why I did it, and I thought I wanted freedom, but now I don't even know who I am without you." She said the man she ran off with left before the baby was born. Said she felt alone. Said she kept expecting the world to reward her for choosing herself, but all she got was silence. I stared at that letter for a long time, and then I burned it. Not because I hated her, but because I was done letting her occupy even an inch of my mind. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. See, I learned something vital through all of this. Something no briefing, no tactical course, no drill sergeant ever taught me, that the greatest act of strength is quiet control. It's refusing to become bitter in a world that's constantly trying to harden you. It's learning to protect your peace without losing your soul. Today, my life is simple. I still serve. I mentor younger soldiers. I volunteer at a foundation that helps service members facing divorce and custody battles because I know how easy it is to lose everything in silence. And I still live in that same house outside Fort Hood. The same walls she once tried to take from me now hold a peace she never understood. The garden out front, it blooms again, and so do I. I don't tell you this story for sympathy. I tell it because someone out there might be in that same tent I was in reading the message that changes everything. And to that person I say this: you are not powerless. You are not broken. And the quiet steps you take today to protect your future, your heart, your name, those are the steps that will save you tomorrow. She left me while I was deployed, thought she'd take everything. But what she didn't know is that I'd already taken back control.